I tell my story to a lot of different groups. I'll tell my story, with the facts of FASD to really any group that'll hear it. Women aren't just out there, drinking it up, I don't care. They're suffering with alcoholism, or they have misinformation. They don't even know that wine and beer can cause the same problems as liquor. A lot of women still don't know that. I believe that secrets keep us sick. I have an adult 31-year-old daughter with permanent brain damage by no fault of her own. I buried 2 children that I honestly believe died as a direct consequence of being prenatally exposed to alcohol. I am taking some very tragic consequences that happened to me and my kids and using that story as a tool to maybe prevent other people from drinking during pregnancy. And in my mind, it makes our story go full circle.
Around the country, women like Kathy are speaking out about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. They are sharing their stories to help other women stop drinking during pregnancy and to show that there is hope in recovery.
Drinking alcohol while I was pregnant, I wasn't able to stop because I didn't know how.
Everybody sees the signs on the bathroom doors and in restaurants and stuff.
I didn't feel I did it that much, like a handful of times during a 9-month period. I didn't think it would have any effect.
And they never could figure out why she was so small, why her head circumference was so small.
I really started noticing some behaviors that were very concerning from the time she was probably about 2.
I thought, something's wrong here. Either my husband and I are not very good parents, or there's something there that nobody else is seeing.
I think we have a problem here, and I don't want to go through this alone.
Well, maybe it's because I was drinking.
The day I found out Carly was permanently damaged because I drank, my world shattered. It was like a tidal wave came over me, even though I knew that was probably what it was.
Kathy noticed something was different about her daughter, even as an infant, but no one knew the cause.
I was worried about Carly when she was an infant because it was like she cried differently than my son had. She was delayed in that she wasn't pulling her head up like I thought she should. She didn't start to roll over or sit up or certainly walking, talking, crawling, all of that. All of those milestones were delayed. So I always had concerns about Carly, but I would go to the doctors and talk to them about it, and they would treat her ear infections and tell me that she was an allergic little girl and lots of babies had allergies and that she would grow out of them and I should not be concerned. And the only reason that she was delayed at all was due to these allergies.
As Carly started school, she continued to struggle, but her parents didn't know why.
She could learn things on Monday. So on Monday, she knew all of her primary colors and could maybe count to 10. And then Tuesday came along, and all of her primary colors were all confused in her head. The things she knew 100% on Monday, she didn't know on Tuesday. I would put expectations on her like, go upstairs, brush your teeth, change your clothes, get your book bag, and hurry it up. We have 5 minutes to get out of the house. And she'd go upstairs and would just shut down. She wasn't able to follow through. I gave her way too much information. We didn't understand that she had a brain disorder because she was prenatally exposed to alcohol.
When Carly was 9 years old, doctors told Kathy her daughter had cerebral palsy, a condition in which injury to the brain affects muscle control, but they were still unsure of the cause.
So we had no clue. She kind of blended in with her peer group up to that point, and you could tell that she was a child with some coordination delays, certainly some memory delays, but certainly never thought of her as a kid with mental retardation, and we always assumed she was going to kind of grow out of it.
Carly didn't grow out of it and was a teenager before her family finally understood the real cause of the challenges she had been facing her whole life. 2 years into recovery and studying to become a counselor, Kathy was at an addiction seminar when she realized that Carly's problems might be the result of her addictions.
I kind of went into a panic mode. What did I use? What did I use when I was pregnant? Trying to remember. And I recalled that I was using wine. And I used wine periodically. I was only 17 years old when I was pregnant with Carly. And I would drink on the weekends. But when I drank way too much because I have alcoholism. So I've always had this built-in tolerance where I could handle a lot of alcohol.
At the age of 16, Carly was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Once Carly was correctly identified as having fetal alcohol syndrome, it changed our whole world. What we did as a family, we met, and we had to say, you know, we have spent 16 years talking about what Carly cannot do, and we're not going to do that anymore. You know, and it was important for all of us to understand her disorder. So what we're going to do as a family is just feed her affirmations. We're going to think about what Carly's good at. And as a family, we were always collecting these things of what she was good at. And we are going to nurture those things and water those things and remind her of those things. Carly wants to help everybody. And she right now takes care of her grandmother. She's sweet and kind and loving. She's helpful. She's a great artist. And she likes to make people happy. Carly is our greatest gift.
Alcohol use during pregnancy hurts 1 in every 100 children born each year. But many women still don't know that there is no safe time and no safe amount of alcohol to drink when they are pregnant.
Essentially, alcohol is a toxin or a poison, so to speak. It has the ability to disrupt the actual growing brain, the development of the brain, the ability of the brain to wire up correctly for the different structures of the brain to develop to the right size in the proper places and to be able to function in the way it was supposed to function.
In addition to damaging the brain, alcohol can affect other developing organs, causing a wide variety of medical conditions. Collectively, these conditions are called Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders. This umbrella term describes the range of effects that can occur in an individual whose mother drank alcohol during pregnancy. These effects may include physical, mental, behavioral, and learning disabilities, with possible lifelong implications. The term FASD is not intended for use as a clinical diagnosis.
Look at this one, it's Christmas, look.
One condition included within the term FASD is Fetal Alcohol Syndrome, or FAS. Children with FAS are often born small. They may have smaller head sizes, or they may be small for their age. They have changes to their faces that may not be obvious, but can be detected by a specialist. Most importantly, like all children with FASD, children with FAS have changes to their brains that can affect their learning and behavior. Most children exposed to alcohol will not meet the criteria for FAS, but they still may have severe effects that change the way their brains work, leading to changes in learning and behavior. FASD is often invisible to the casual observer and affects each child differently.
People with fetal alcohol syndrome and fetal alcohol effects, or FASD, show a broad range of deficits. We don't expect to see everybody having the exact same problem every time. Depends on the timing of the alcohol exposure, depends on the dose of alcohol exposure, and a lot of other maternal and genetic factors too.
You might see, some difficulties with physical skills, balance and coordination. You might see very different kinds of difficulties with processing sensory information from, movement, touch, sounds, and what children see visually. So it really manifests itself differently.
To really understand what FASD is, it helps to meet people who are affected by it. Julie and her husband, Lynn, are foster or adoptive parents to 7 children with FASD. Meeting just a few of their children shows the wide range of effects prenatal alcohol exposure can have.
The youngest one, Cayenne, who is 5, cognitively is on target. Those aren't her areas of weakness. Hers are more in expressive language, and especially in sensory integration. She doesn't, like the tags on the inside of a shirt kind of drive her crazy. She has a problem sometimes tuning out other auditory kinds of things that are going on in the background. Her first cousin, Brandon, on the other hand, who is 8.5, Brandon does have full-blown fetal alcohol syndrome, and he was diagnosed at 3.5 months. Brandon's areas of weakness is definitely in cognition. His IQ is 59. He has difficulty with fine motor skills, so it's hard for him in school to do handwriting and, printing, that kind of thing. Schoolwork is tough for him. Ricky has very obvious neurologic impairment. He has hand tremors. For the most part, he's very mellow, very friendly, but it doesn't take much. Just like out of the blue, all of a sudden, he could be having a rage. He doesn't really know where it came from, and it's done. It's over with as far as he's concerned. And then he has a hard time understanding why maybe the kid that he was having a fight with isn't over it, And then their older brother, Theodore, who is now 19, and we still have legal guardianship of Theodore as an incapacitated adult. Theodore has a verbal IQ of 55, which is moderately retarded for in the verbal IQ range, and yet you would never know it by looking at him. He is tall and he's handsome and he's a mother's dream of a son for the most part. He's compliant, he's respectful, and I can say, Theo, will you take the trash out? And he'll say, okay, Mom. Tessa's IQ is well within the normal range. She has some learning disabilities in math and in written language, but cognitively she's on target as far as her IQ goes. And I have had to fight for services all over the place for her because she doesn't qualify. So many things are hooked to whether or not you have a low enough IQ, and she just doesn't. And her especially, up until 4th grade, we heard constantly if she would just be quiet, she could read. If she would just sit still, she could do her math. If she would stop bugging the other kids. Everything was presented as if it was willful and manipulative on her part. And she got raked over the coals at home and at school because we just kept saying, Tessa, settle down. Concentrate here. I know you know these answers. And she really didn't.
After raising numerous adoptive children with FASD, Julie had a startling realization about her own birth daughter.
I've been in recovery for 24 years. I knew that I drank, with my oldest daughter. And yet, I told you, up until 1992, I didn't even know what fetal alcohol syndrome was. So even though I knew that Faith had problems in school that her other 2 sisters didn't, Faith is shorter and tinier than her other sisters, than the rest of the family. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until after I had been taking a bunch of the kids to the clinic. And I remember coming home, and I'd come home from those visits and I'd pull Faith's pictures out, of when she was a little girl and in her early teens. And I'd think, these kids, she looks just like my foster and my adopted children. She just has blonde hair and blue eyes. And I would remember what and how much I drank, when I was 17 and pregnant with her. And finally, when she was 25, I asked her if she would be interested in going to the clinic. And she agreed to go to that clinic. And when I left that day, I was the birth mom of a daughter with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Because FASD can affect children in so many different ways, it can be hard for mothers to tell if their children have been affected by prenatal alcohol exposure.